back to Analysis, where we've been discussing the situation in Burma 1 year on from the Mektila massacre of Muslims. When Aung San Suu Kyi was released from house arrest 5 years ago, there was much hope from the media and its human rights groups that Burma might turn the page on its long history and oppression and abuse of its Muslim population, in particular the Rohingyas. But much of the violence in Mektila and elsewhere has shown that she has been surprisingly quiet on the topic, stating that the Rohingya are not facing persecution. Human Rights Watch has called the reforms made since the transition to democracy uneven, and it's added that the attacks on Rohingya amounted to a campaign of ethnic cleansing and crimes against humanity. So are things getting worse for the Rohingyas and other Muslims under democracy? We spoke to Asad Beg, a freelance journalist who's recently travelled to Burma and the town of Mektila about the situation of the Rohingyas in Burma.
Well, the opposition and the politicians are silent on the issue of the Rohingya and the minorities in Burma, and especially Aung San Suu Kyi, who is a darling of the West, and people didn't really know her politics. She's remained completely silent on the Rohingya. In fact, she's gone a step further. In the interview with the BBC, she said that there was no ethnic cleansing of the Rohingya. Now, I think that people will have to sooner or later accept that she will also be a victim of the anti-Muslim hatred in the sense that she may also possess this. She may also be Islamophobic because it's so entrenched in society and it's so widespread. And, she's used her political capital on other issues, but she's failed to speak up on behalf of the Rohingya or the Muslim minorities. So I think that, in terms of looking at opposition figures, I don't see anybody that's going to speak for the minorities. I think the pressure has to come internationally from the ASEAN countries, from the West, to kind of force recognition of the Rohingya, to force equal rights and equal opportunities for the minorities in Burma, not just Muslims, but for all minorities. And I think that the problem is that because Burma is opening up for business, because Burma is putting up this kind of facade and this veneer of openness and a move towards democracy, I think certain leaders in the West are prepared to compromise on the treatment or the ethnic cleansing of minorities, because we have to be truthful and realistic here. What's happening to the Rohingya is a slow genocide. It's a slow ethnic cleansing, what's taking place.
Well, that was Asad Beg. Well, rejoining me in the studio to discuss this is Tun Kin, president of the Burmese Rohingya Organization in the UK, Jo Win, secretary of the Burmese Muslim Association, and on Skype we're now joined by Phil Robertson, who's deputy director of the Asia Division at Human Rights Watch. Welcome. Well, Phil Robertson, let me start with you. Can you explain why you think Aung San Suu Kyi is being so quiet on these minority abuse issues?
Well, she's been particularly quiet on the issue of the Rohingya in Rakhine State. Actually, the larger Burmese.
Oh, we seem to have some problem now in the connection.
Hello.
We'll have to come back to you, I'm afraid. There's a problem in the studio. Let me ask you, Tun Kin, why do you think she hasn't spoken out more on the Rohingya issue?
Well, it is, unfortunately, we Rohingya feel very sad on that. Seems like we don't have any friends in Burma, even opposition parties leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, an icon, she's not supporting on our cause. And during, like 1990 election, we Rohingya have supported her party. Our Rohingya parties were alliance with her. And like Rohingya organization, like Burmese Rohingya organization, UK and other countries around the world, we campaign to release Aung San Suu Kyi and other political prisoners. So we supported for the human rights and democracy development in Burma with her. But she's not speaking today. This is a big, a tragic moment for
Has she visited Rakhine State, the Rohingya state?
It is very surprising. We repeatedly, request her to visit to Rakhine State. where Rohingya, where IDP camps, how the situation, how to find out what's happened. But instead, she did not visit there. Instead, she refused that it is not ethnic cleansing or crime against humanity. And Human Rights Watch have visited to the areas. They have well documented with international lawyers, including together. They mentioned that it is ethnic cleansing. But unfortunately, she stated that this is not ethnic cleansing or crime against humanity.
Well, you mentioned in the first half of the programme that there are 3 Rohingya MPs from the ruling government party of the military, if you like.
Yes.
Are there any Rohingya candidates in the National League for Democracy in her party?
No, but Rohingya, during 1990 election, Rohingya have their own party. NDPH, National Democratic Party for Human Rights. That party was alliance with Aung San Suu Kyi party. We supported her. So during, one Rohingya MP is a CRPP member working with NLD and other ethnic groups together. But in this critical, serious situation, no one is speaking for us. So we have very little friend in our own country. So in this issue, in this connection, what I would like to point out here is within Burma, there will not be a solution for the Rohingya. We need international community help protection from Burma.
Well, let me come back to Phil Robertson. I think the line has been restored to Phil from Human Rights Watch. We've just heard in the studio while you were away that they're very disappointed, the Rohingya community, about the lack of action and the lack of words by Aung San Suu Kyi. Why do you think she is being so quiet, Phil?
Well, I think it's political. I think it's quite clear that she has recognized that she's not going to win any votes by going to support the Rohingya in this cause. That as your other speaker mentioned, there's not that much support for the Rohingya within the larger Burmese politics and the scenes amongst the various different groups. The ethnic groups and also the Burmans have all come to the conclusion that the Rohingya are somehow not part of Burma, and very few people willing to stand up to them. And Aung San Suu Kyi has said first and foremost that she's a politician, that she's not a human rights activist. And by her stance on the Rohingya, she's proving that every day.
And do you think the international community is being much too soft then on the same issue, or are they taking their lead, as it were, from her?
I actually think that the international community is dismayed with her stance on this. They expected much more from her. The international community right now has a narrative that the human rights situation in Burma is progressing well, it's going forward in all the places except Arakan State, and somehow that Arakan State needs to be fixed. But they're not willing to press the Burmese government as hard as they need to. They're not willing to insist that Aung San Suu Kyi and the opposition also take up the issue. They're essentially saying that it's a major problem with humanitarian assistance being cut off and MSF being thrown out. But then when push comes to shove, there's always something more important than the situation in Arakan State to address for the international community.
Well, can I come back to you, Chow Win? I mean, you're secretary of the Burmese Muslim Association, and I gather there are almost as many Muslims who are not Rohingya as who are Rohingya. About half the population are not Rohingya of the Muslim population. I mean, has Aung San Suu Kyi said anything about Muslim discrimination, anti-Muslim discrimination in particular, not just the Rohingya issue?
Even, actually, in November last year, while she was in UK and she did one interview, she mentioned fear of Islam, and this is which is shocked us. How come 4% Muslim could become a threat for the Burma for more than 86% Buddhist?
You mean
so
she meant fear? She meant it's justified to be afraid of Islam.
Yeah, afraid of Islam. So afraid of Islam, we are 4% in Burma, and we are discriminated since many decades, and we don't even have. For example, to the Rohingya community, you can see they don't even allow to access from one village to another village, and they are totally concentrated into the camp nowadays. And other part of Burma as well, as long as you're a Muslim, you can't do a lot of things. So in this situation, Muslims have been persecuted and discriminated from all sides, and how could we become a threat for the country? Even herself, at that point, I would like to raise two things here. One thing is those who have the power to change the situation, scenario, totally. Those who have the power, and those who follow this power. And those who have the power is the government, Burmese government, the ruling party. They have this kind of power and they have the authority to do so many things. And including Aung San Suu Kyi, we all have to follow what situation is. We don't have, and point to be noted is, we need to understand that she is not a government. She is among one of the citizens of Burma which is international, one of the figure. She has to say certain things. But in terms of power and authority, we doesn't have this. We don't have this. So we need, international community should concentrate on focus on the government, Burmese government, put pressure on them. Why they are allowing Muslims allowing the Buddhist extremists to target innocent Muslims, innocent children, burning alive them. So these kind of things, and they don't take any action against them. And even though you can see international community have seen this video clips from BBC, how police are letting people kill, and we have so many documents, we have so many witnesses, we have recorded how police are allowed to target by the Buddhist extremists in Mektila, in other parts of Burma.
Well, Phil Robertson, is Aung San Suu Kyi still likely to become president? Have they changed the constitution yet that would lift the restriction on her as somebody who's got people who are not Burmese born, I think, in her family, or whatever the restriction is?
You're talking about Article 59F.
Yes.
Of the Constitution, which essentially says that if she has children who are foreigners, that she can't be president.
Right. Are they going to lift that?
We don't think that provision has not been changed, and frankly, I don't see it being changed. I think the Burmese army has got her just where they want her. She effectively fell into a trap by taking off pressure in a number of different ways before getting the full commitment to reform the Constitution, and I think that it's not going to change. I think that despite the fact that the NLD is campaigning all around Burma on the need to change the Constitution, and frankly, we do think that the Constitution should be changed. This is a discriminatory provision. There are other provisions in the Constitution that guarantee continued military control over budgets and 25% of the parliament that also need to be changed. But we don't see any incentive for the military to do that, and I don't think she's going to be president, to be honest. Unless the Constitution changes, the best she can do as vice president, assuming that her party wins a landslide in the lower house. So, it may be a frustrating year for her, but it's also maybe a very dangerous year where ethnic tensions and tensions between communities, not only in Arakan State but other parts of the country, also come to the fore as people instigate hate or fear of the other to try to win votes.
Well, let's develop that point. There were many different ethnic mini-wars going on inside Burma. Now they've had some sort of peace process, but is there really an end of violence for the other communities, in the east of the country, for example, not just the Rohingya issue?
Well, we can see a lot of meetings are going on, particularly, peace process, what they so-call. But we don't see practically things still, fightings are going on. If you look at Kashina State, Karana State, and Shina State, still, fightings are going on. Particularly Kashina State is a very, very serious issue.
So the negotiations haven't achieved anything?
In my opinion, it's just as a, it's just a kind of change you can see from outside. But inside the real, genuine peace process or not, it's very hard to say. I don't think so, in my opinion.
And what's your view? Do you agree with that?
Lack of political solution, actually. Their government is doing, they're showing off what they're doing now. But when you see the ground, they are giving access to the Burma army to occupy ethnic place or ethnic land. And they are giving their order to those doing the peace brokers. We need this point, we need that hill, we need that point. And it means they are actually giving access to Burma army to occupy ethnic lands. And that is the solution. There is no political solution at all here. as long as there is no political solution, there will be no genuine ceasefire in Burma.
Well, Phil Robertson, coming back to you then, I mean, it's a pretty bleak picture we're getting, that the ethnic wars are continuing, the Rohingya discrimination and violence, anti-Rohingya violence is increasing. Aung San Suu Kyi is not going to become president. I mean, is your prognosis quite pessimistic?
Well, I think the issue of the ethnic ceasefires, I mean, they're trying to get to a national ceasefire with all the ethnic groups. But the problem is that there's no real content beyond the ceasefire. It's not a significant change from what they had before. There's no significant change within the army's stance on decentralization of power, of pulling back forces from front lines, on ending forced labor. All these things continue. And the problem, the core problem, is that the military itself, which is a sort of government within a government, has not appreciably changed its views. I mean, we see a lot of discussion about reform, and President Thein Sein gets put out in front to sort of promote that reform. But at the end of the day, the military has not taken the necessary decisions to change and to go with the reform process. So I expect that 2015 is going to be a year of possible confrontation. We hope that it won't be that. We hope that rights will be respected. But so far, as you say, there's many different problems. The situation in Rakhine State is definitely going backwards with the expulsion of humanitarians and the essential lockdown of the Rohingya in these IDP camps without necessary food and medical services, disempowered and not able to move. I mean, it's a very dire situation in Rakhine State, and it may get worse if the Rakhine extremists mount further attacks.
I mean, I remember when this whole process started and Thein Sein came to power, there were people and started some reforms. There were people who were going back and comparing it to the Soviet reform movement of Mikhail Gorbachev and saying that he was some kind of secret reformer, Thein Sein, who'd managed to get to the top of the tree and was now really sort of showing his true colors, and there was real reform, as we know, in the Soviet Union. But from what you're saying, it seems Thein Sein wasn't really the secret reformer at all, and he's much more front man of a collective which is still pretty hard line. Is that the case?
That would be my contention for sure. There's still rumors that Tan Shui is playing a role behind the scenes. There's been leaked various different memos and things like that point to that. It's almost impossible to tell because the Burmese army is so opaque. You can't really tell what's happening in the top levels of the army. But on the ground, their behavior has not changed, and it's not clear that they're necessarily with the reform process.
Is your analysis pretty much the same? That
yes, exactly. To come to the point, to the things, what is the thing? He's not a reformist. He's assigned as a reformist. So
he's a what?
Assigned as a reformist. He was appointed as a reformist.
Appointed as a reformist.
Yeah, so there is no. I mean, they don't have. Whenever you look at the steps they are taking place, like when Time magazine was talking about a face of terror, about his terror, talking about Wirathu, who is known as a Burmese Bin Laden, he himself issued a statement that he protect him, and he protected him, and that he is not that kind of violent person. He is just the son of Lord Buddha, and this is how he is doing. And the shocking thing is now he is initiating a marriage law. We obtained some document from Parliament. I mean, that's sending to Parliament from President office, that President Thein Sein is giving order to, requesting to Parliament to draft a law, actually to cap non-Buddhist population and to restrict the marriage law. This kind of thing. How come a democratic reformist drafting such kind of undemocratic law, and how could we, accept him as a reformist? And it is quite funny for us, how could the person who said kick out all those Rohingya people to the third country, or keep them in the concentration camp, such a sound like a Nazi Hitler, and how come he become a reformist? It's quite funny, but international community, I think in that point, hoping more than excessive optimism which is really creating problems here.
Well, let's just, we have to come to the end in a minute. We did see on the earlier clip the US Congress discussing this whole issue, the Senate as well. Do you see that as in any way a hopeful sign that some senior American politicians are getting more vocal on the question of abuse of human rights?
Well, we need to see there is a lot of resolutions, particularly EU, European Parliament and US Congress. Well, we appreciate, we welcome that resolution recently done from US Congress. This is a kind of positive way. But we need to see how Obama administration will implement that. This is a very important point because, as far as what we can see now, military to military action, they are waiting to do by the, Obama administration with the President Tenzin government. So they have to put such a timeline and benchmark to stop genocide on Rohingya, particularly.
A timeline saying an ultimatum. If nothing is done,
yeah,
then there should be sanctions, back to sanctions.
Yeah, they are calling for to end this persecution. They have to set up timeline and benchmark. Like before December 2014, they have to restore Rohingya citizenship and stop. They have to lift up restriction on movement, marriage, education, this and that. By 2 years, we can see always U.S. Obama administration and other European countries, UK, they are doing resolution. They are calling for Burmese government to stop this and that. But we can't see any positive, effective action. So for this point, they have to immediately they have to put pressure and they have to put such timeline and benchmark to stop genocide on the Rohingya.
All right. There have to be benchmarks and action and timelines. On that note, we have to end this episode of Analysis. I'd like to thank my guests, Phil Robertson, Joe Tonkin, Joe Wynn, and of course you at home for watching. Please tune in again for future discussions, and don't forget you can keep up with the discussion by following us on Twitter, the address below on your screen, or by following Islam Channel Current Affairs on Facebook. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.